Redditors who metal detect. What has been your coolest discovery? A few years ago, a guy on Reddit asked Reddit if anyone had a metal detector he could borrow to find his wife's lost wedding ring. I lived local to him at the time and had one I never really used. I offered help, showed up at the dude's house, and we ended up finding the ring in about 10 minutes. That was the first and last time I ever used that metal detector. /Jolithium, if you're still out there, I hope you're doing well, and your wife hasn't lost her ring again. A 380 Roman coin I found on the Thames foreshore. It was full moon and a very low tide, so I stood almost in the middle of Thames. I can't wrap my head around how old the coin is. My personal experience of old is my grandfather, who is 2 generations away from me. Someone lost the coin 68 generations ago. That find put everything in a different perspective for me. When I read about Edward the Confessor, died 1066, I think it was so long ago. And then I think, wait, it's 700 years after someone lost the coin I'm holding in my hands. This happened to my best friend. She lost her ring the day after she was proposed to at the beach in Los Angeles. She was crying and asked the lifeguard tower if there was anything they could do. They gave her a number to this metal detector guy named Harry. They said he was the best in town and not to call anyone else. So they give him a ring and he's there 20 minutes later with his metal detector. Old tan dude with long beach hair. Took him 5 minutes to find the ring. She offered to give him $200 cash. He said no thank you. Their happiness was enough for him. The year was 1996. I was 22 and just bought my first metal detector. I was at my girlfriend's house and asked her mom if I could use it in the backyard. She says sure and then starts telling me about a precious ring her oldest daughter had lost in the backyard in 1979. It was a family heirloom and was missed very greatly. She pulls out home movies that were made the day it was lost. It was at a family reunion. Well, I saw in the movie where the girl was mostly hanging out. I walked outside, turned on my detector, and found the ring that had been lost for 17 years in about 2 minutes. I bought my son a kid's size 1 for his 6th birthday. I'm the one that uses it though. I feel pretty ridiculous walking around with it, but I just can't help myself. My family can be little turds when I get it out and constantly throw coins in the sand when detecting on a beach just to see me get excited. It's kinda scary how many rusty nails and razor blades I find on beaches. I've found a few rings but pretty sure they're just costume jewelry. Lots of coins too, but mostly rusty nails. So many rusty nails. My father-in-law's gold wedding ring that he had lost almost 15 years before. I had detected the S out of the area that he told he had lost it in. Found literally dozens and dozens of pieces of junk over hours and hours of detecting and digging. Digging in clay. Sometimes digging deep. Every hit I get I pull something out. So my machine is working despite me being a rank new. In the end, I don't find it, so of course I get the disappointed look and comments about my machine not working very well, with the obvious implication in the air that I failed. Now, I'm kinda pee at myself and frustrated already. So yeah, I feel like us about it. A year or 2 go by and I decide to detect the garden area to kill some time and dick around with my detector on a nice fall day. The garden area is well over 200 feet away from the spot he had pointed to initially. Their acreage is just under 8 acres, so I wasn't really looking for the ring. But you never know, eh? So instead of doing a grid like you would when you seriously want to cover every inch of ground, because the garden is about 200 feet by about 50 feet, and I was just ******ing around, I just let my intuition lead me in a meandering route. I find a couple of pieces of junk, and then I pull a gold-looking. I call my wife over and ask her if it's her dad's ring. Frankly, it looked thinner and smaller than I expected. She calls her mom over, and her mom almost starts crying. They call him over, and he almost starts crying. When we were in high school, my buddy and I were metal detecting around his dad's yard. Found a door to a small fallout shelter that the original owners of the house had built out of paranoia. Still stocked with several weeks' worth of canned food, tools, medical supplies, and a radio. A pre-Revolutionary War graveyard in my backyard in Connecticut. Got a metal detector to locate nails in some 250-year-old chestnut flooring I was refinishing in an old colonial I bought. Took my 5-year-old son out to the backyard to play with it. Found out I had 6 people buried in the back corner of my yard. Lead-lined wooden caskets show up really well. State came in, made all kinds of nasty noises about things, and then just sort of disappeared. Turned out they were the original settlers in my town, and no one knew what to do about the graves, so we all just pretended like they weren't there. I knew a guy, friend of a friend sort of thing, in Northern Virginia. I went to his house a few times. He was an old biker guy who liked to drink beer and BBQ, and I was lucky enough to be invited via my friend a few times. On his property out behind the house, it was a bit wooded, and there was a single grave of an unknown Confederate soldier. He told me the story about how, as the neighborhood gentrified, a UP lawyer moved in next door, and when he saw the headstone, he moved it to his property as a conversation piece. The guy I knew moved it back, and the UP moved it again. This went back and forth a few times. Eventually, the UP lawyer went to the county courthouse to raise a stink claiming that the headstone belonged on his property and that the biker guy should be arrested for stealing it. Unfortunately for him, the clerk knew the old biker guy as a lifelong resident and just went and pulled the map that showed the property lines with the clearly marked historical grave and told UP lawyer that if it ended up on his property again, he would be arrested for desecrating a historical grave marker. The remains of my neighbor's dad's pocket watch, dropped in the yard tilde 50 years ago. Beyond repair certainly, but recognizable and somewhat satisfying to my neighbor, I hope. Mostly I find old farmyard rubbish because of where we live, but I'm happy to get that out of the ground too. Old leaf springs and axles, an axe head, a jalopy-type hood. Sometimes the hit coincides with the old midden pile, where you'll find bottles and crockery and china as well. Found a 1915 barber quarter at the in-laws too. Not sure if this is the kind of answer you're looking for, but I work as an MRI tech aide and I run a handheld metal detector over patients before I bring them into the scanner room. For those who may not know, MRI scanners have an extremely strong magnetic field. It's so strong that bringing something into the scanner room, which isn't MRI safe, like a metal chair, gurney, or oxygen tank, would literally make that object go flying through the air and into the scanner. It's very dangerous, and we constantly have to check that people aren't bringing anything inside the scanner room with them that isn't MRI safe. Anyways, we had a young kid come in who was about 9 years old for a brain scan. I'm getting him ready for his MRI and talking with him, trying to keep him calm. Kids his age sometimes freak out when they see the scanner. I ask him if he has anything in his pockets, and he says he does, and takes out some change and a pen. I then run a metal detector over his pockets to reaffirm that they're empty, and the metal detector whizzes and beeps in one of his cargo pockets. He looks at me with a wide-eyed stare, as if he is about to be in trouble. I ask him what's in there, and he starts tearing up and looks over at his mom. I'm confused and also glance at his mom as she stares back at myself and her son with the same look of confusion. His mom sternly asks her son, "What's in your pocket?" The poor kid is standing there crying with his arms and legs spread as if I'm about to search him before handcuffing him and hauling him off to kiddie jail. He replies to his mom, "I'm sorry. It's not mine." I put my hand in his pocket and proceed to pull out a 5-inch spring-loaded knife and a lighter. The kid's mom looses it and starts lecturing him in a pretty loud and powerful manner. Apparently, this kid had been hanging around with some bad kids in the neighborhood, and his mom instantly knew that the knife and lighter came from one of those boys he shouldn't have been running around with. She told him to stop crying and to get yo butt inside that scanner right now. We ended up proceeding with his MRI and were kinda laughing about it with his mom while he was inside the scanner. Poor little guy still had tears running down his face when we finished about 30 minutes later. Lol. He was a good kid, you could tell. He really was upset that he made his mom angry. The poor kid is standing there crying with his arms and legs spread as if I'm about to search him before handcuffing him and hauling him off to kiddie jail. He replies to his mom, "I'm sorry. It's not mine." I put my hand in his pocket and proceed to pull out a 5-inch spring-loaded knife and a lighter. The kid's mom loses it and starts lecturing him in a pretty loud and powerful manner. Apparently, this kid had been hanging around with some bad kids in the neighborhood, and his mom instantly knew that the knife and lighter came from one of those boys he shouldn't have been running around with. She told him to stop crying and to get yo butt inside that scanner right now. We ended up proceeding with his MRI and were kinda laughing about it with his mom while he was inside the scanner. Poor little guy still had tears running down his face when we finished about 30 minutes later. Lol. He was a good kid, you could tell. He really was upset that he made his mom angry.